Test, test, allô. Ça ne marche pas. Test, test. Non, il marche pas.
Je vérifie parce que je suis un. Ouais, c'est bon.
Ah, tu t'avais dit que je vais voir. Test, test.
Il y aura des gros bonnets là, qui vont arriver. Il y aura des gros bonnets là, qui vont arriver. Ça y est, on va se faire reconnaître par les pros. Ah, moi je suis confiant, je trouve que ça va. On a une belle presse, on a un bon projet, une bonne équipe.
J'ai une slide. En fait, la slide qui me tient le plus à cœur, la slide sur le quality of play, c'est pas la sortie, enfin naturellement. En fait, j'ai tellement pas arrêté de la chanter quand je comprenais que je suis perdu dans.
C'est pas très grave, mais je pense qu'en vrai, faut juste qu'on monte. Ouais. On passe en premier le matin. On est bien. C'est très bien. Ouais. Pour le répéter, mais je pense
Non,
que.
le projet, oui, mais c'est juste pour moi, genre,
Ah oui.
production, genre, je m'étais dit, genre, pouvoir mettre en avant, genre, t'as vu hier, ça a bien marché, je vais mettre en avant le quality of life. Et genre, j'arrive pas à le mettre un peu en avant, mais
Par contre, c'était à 11h, hein, je pense. Non, mais tant mieux. Comme ça, on est sûr.
pour la slide où il monte,
Cette slide là.
cette slide là,
Je sais pas. Attends. Il y a deux. Un revenant. Ça, je vais pas. Il n'y a pas de risque qui sonne. J'ai mon petit déj dans le box là-haut. Deux petits fours.
c'est pas là pour
On s'en va, on se fait la musique.
On va pas, je pense qu'on devrait être à 10 en max avec les enfants dans la main.
Moi, tu maîtrises tout. Hein.
Bisous à Catherine. Ça devrait être ça normalement.
Si ça marche pas, vous me faites signe, j'ai rien demandé.
Hi everybody. Thank you for coming. First of all, I want to thank all the jury members, and particularly David that come from far. So this is the first jury for Master 2. I will try to do it in English. Yeah. I will let Catherine explain you the day, how it will go on, and what we expect you for this first jury. And first of all, I present myself briefly. I'm Axel Buendia, and I'm the new director of Engmin for this year. Next year we will see. And again, thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we know that without you, the school won't be the same. So I let Catherine explain you the following.
Hi everybody, so my name is Catherine Roland, and I will just give you a few details today because the important aspect is what they're gonna present you. So just to, as a reminder, sorry, it's the first jury of a project that will last 4 months in total, in order to give, to give a vertical slice of what a pre-production could bring. They started this project let's say 2 weeks ago, because they were involved in some events. So let's say it's after 2 weeks of work. So they're gonna present you the main concept of the project, and we are expecting from you a reaction about this concept that they will present you. This will be in English. Do not hesitate after to ask your questions or give your comments in French or English. We want to let everybody express themselves correctly, and we will let the students answer in the language they prefer as well, if you're okay with that. So we're gonna have 3 presentations this morning and 3 this afternoon, with a 2-hour break in between. During these breaks, lunchtime and maybe after, if you are still there, do not hesitate to go see the students if you want to go further. I will be, I don't know if you say that, the master of time. I'm just looking at David. That works. So I will have the hard role to say, okay, 10 minutes finished, because they have to present in 10 minutes, and we will have after 20 minutes to discuss with them. Then another group will take place. If that's fine for everybody. I don't know if you have questions. We do have water for everybody, so feel free to take. So okay, your turn.
Hi everyone, we are the team behind Peak. Basically, Peak is where SSX meets Monster Hunter meets Moebius. Okay. This means that the player will control a hunter that go down a slope on a windsurf-like vehicle in order to track down and kill a gigantic beast. Here we can have a better look at the main character and their board. We were inspired by Draconic populations and rusty technologies from some sci-fi universes to give the avatar this mysterious scavenger look. Their slenderness conveys a sense of agility and liveliness, as expected of a high-level rider, and the green parts on the board is directly linked to the omnipresent jade-like rock formations. We gave the universe a high contrast between the red sand and the green rocks to create a sense of wonder and to have a unique look for our game. Sorry. While there still is a lot of work to do on building this new world, we already feel that the jade will be an essential part of the technology. This primitive-looking culture relies heavily on the resources found on hunting the beast we talked about. Currently, we are working on designing this one, a huge ray/worm. It is intended to be at first pacific, but when the player finds it, it will be upset and either flee or fight back. The hunt is at the very core of our experience, gliding and sliding to catch up with it, attacking to kill it, and all of this with an arcade physical sensation. We want an arcade-oriented physics-based game and also an environment that the player can discover and enjoy. It may seem as contradictory, and it is definitely a big challenge, but we feel that it can be done by working really hard on the music and sound design, the visual effects, and the camera work. We are thinking on a camera system based on two modes. There will be a cinematographic one with predetermined positions and movements within the world to show the player the beast, the environment, to create dramatic effects, and to let the player have moments where they can feel the world and breathe. And there will be the main mode, the functional one, during gameplay, that will try to always show the player the best possible view for them to make decisions. This is an in-game mock-up of this view, and we will show you a musical mock-up along with it.
That was our first attempt to bring the universe of Peak alive. And we're working right now on a thematic approach for the main characters. So the music will be gameplay driven and it will be interactive. So we're going to be working on it further to make it faster and more dynamic with the speed sense. We want no music or very subtle music when the player is not hunting the creature, to let some place for the sound design, and we really want the sound design to communicate the sense of speed. We're also very attached to the SSX tricky remix techniques. This happens when the player is on the air and he makes tricks. You have audio effects, different kind of filters, and this really enhances the game feel and the dynamic aspect we want to give to the game. Speaking of gameplay, we have our basic mechanics. These are acceleration when the player is gliding down the slope, also the direction and the jump. At the moment, we're thinking of more advanced mechanics, but they are yet to be determined. There are the trick-based skill system, the multi-purpose skills, so one mechanic can work in different ways in the game, and different classes with different skills and characteristics. We want to keep our controls simple, and a way of achieving this for us is to keep the accessibility in mind on the start of the project. So we're thinking about simple controls, adjustable game speed, or even change the font size. For the vertical slice, we have our core mechanics and feelings. These are glide down the slope, we want the hunting aspect, and we just want the game to be fun for the player. So we have one slope with one beast for one player. For the technical aspect, we're using Unity because the team is familiar with it, and we think it is performant enough for our project. And for the audio side of things, we are using Wwise because everybody knows Wwise in the team. The sound designer can work more independently, and we're planning on using the Wwise Motion plugin, which allows us to control the rumble of the controller with Wwise. This will play a huge part in the game feel of the game. For the audio, we really want to enhance the sense of speed. We're thinking of games like Steep, where there are a lot of interactive elements like the wind that intensifies with acceleration. We want to keep dynamic range in mind because we're going to have boss fight scenes, and we don't want it to be too loud. And finally, we're already working on the pre-production on a technical audio design document, which includes all the audio features we want to include in the game. One of them is the interactive wind sound, another one is the glide of the character, and we're already thinking about events, RTPCs, and states to be integrated in the game.
Early on the project, we pinned down 3 main risks and thought about ways to tackle them. First one being that we are making a physics-based game, and it takes a lot of time and researches to have something that will please us. So for now, we have one developer that is full-time on it. The other one is that we want to create a boss, and it requires a lot of work from our team, and especially from the 3D artist. And so we are looking for tricks that will reduce the amount of work they will have to do. Last one is that we are a big team, and a big team allows us to have more ambitious project, but in the other hand, we'll have to have a more structured and organized pipeline, so everyone can know what they have to do and when to do it. For our production focus, we wanted to deal first with our risk and pillars, so we are already working on physics and feelings. And after that, we will work on all the boss, track, and mechanics. And we are keeping narration and cinematics at the end, because also it's a good adding to our project. It's something that we can cut if needed. In the background, we will work on all the full game design, as well as game rendering. And we would like to polish our game throughout all the production, instead of having like a few weeks at the end dedicated to it. All of our organization plan is built around the quality of life of team members. For example, we have flexible work hours to prevent people from working too much each day. We have a lot of meetings. It's one each morning and one each Monday to keep everyone up to date. And we are trying to make sure that everyone can speak each time. We thought of the workspace organization so that everyone can move and speak freely. And we are creating a lounge space, where people can relax during the day. We also want to have a free afternoon Friday where people can express their creativity around the project. We will as well would like to have a stable build at all time in the box so that people can try the build and see the progression of the project throughout the whole months. For productivity tracking, we are not sure yet. We are still benchmarking to find the best tool for our team. But we are slowly turning toward Jira. And for the pipeline, we know that we need something structured as we are 11, but we will work on it on the next few weeks. In terms of overview, we don't have yet the target and business plan, as it's too early for us to give you one, but we are working on it. And for the unique selling points, we are creating a 3D arcade glide game where SSX meets Monster Hunter in a unique environment. Thank you all for your attention. I will call the rest of the team to join me on stage, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Do you have some questions? Yeah. Can you present yourself before asking? Thank you.
Hello, thank you for our presentation. I'm Christophe Bellumer from Playing Lab. I just have a question for the understanding of your concept. You seem really focused of presenting the moving features, but you talk about hunting. Can you just explain in a few words the objective of the hunting, some mechanics, giving examples to have a better view?
A lot of mechanics are yet to be defined because we spent a lot of time to really synchronize the team towards a common vision, and now we have the vision. We know where we want to go, and we are working on the mechanics. Basically, the hunt is a hunt like Monster Hunter. There is a beast somewhere. You go down the slope, you find it, and you attack it. The gameplay of attacking is to be defined again, but we really like the idea of the trick-based skill, meaning that we don't want the player to have a board and a gun or the ability to cast fireball. We want the tricks and the movement of the board itself to be the way of attacking the creator. So how you will play, there is a level, you find the beast, you attack it, there will be phases like a boss, and at the end you kill it or you don't kill it, and you have resources, maybe a RPG ecosystem behind it. We don't know yet, but that's the basic idea.
Okay, I think it was a missing piece in your presentation. It's the fighting mechanics, and because we have a lot of visuals about the feeling of moving, and the vehicle is not designed in a combative way, so be aware of that for the rest of the project. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sandrine Dubois. I'm working at Asmodee Digital. I am an art director, UX designer, and UI designer. I have two questions, if it's possible. One for the art direction. You mentioned that you're going to put the narrative at the very end of your project because you might want to cut it if you don't have time. But I'm wondering if it doesn't already exist and if it's something that you can start a little bit with it to give coherence to your art direction, because you already took a lot of decision with the look of your character, your environment. There is pattern on it. And I don't know if it would be interesting to already write something really short to give you coherence to everything you're going to create visually, and already starting a backstory. Even if it's not the narrative of the game itself, but just the environment. So that was my thought. And for the UX, I was also wondering, you talk about fighting and the sensation of speed, but it would be interesting to also bring other words that define the experience of the player, what the feeling is going to leave, what emotion the game's going to, because it's not, I think, a game of difficult thought about bringing I don't know, pieces together and puzzle and stuff. And I think it's more a game of feeling. So I think it would be good if you write the feeling of the players gonna live when it plays the games. So, good.
Yeah. About the backstory, actually, everything the artist designed is based on tacit backstory for now. We will probably write it. The thing that we said is cuttable is more of the cinematic aspect of the narrative part. But yeah, we have yet the whole environment is designed around a concept, a story actually. So we will have it written. For now, we're debating on it, but we have the basis of that.
For the UX part, I agree with you. It could be nice to more define the real core experience. Here we wanted to show you how the game could be built, in which aspect with mechanics stuff it could be built with glide and hunting. And yeah, it's something we have to discuss with all the designers, and it could be more. It could be better to design the really player experience. Yeah. So thank you for the feedback.
We still have some time, so if you have other questions.
Hi, I'm Vincent Levy. I'm a game designer. My question is about the balance between the hunting and the gliding. So in your concept, from what I gathered from your presentation, you slide down the slope, you're chasing the beast. What happens when you arrive? Do you reach a destination with the area where the beast is? And what happens? Can you describe maybe the user story of just like, I arrive at the scene? How long does it take for me to get there? And how long is going to be the fight compared to the gliding part?
Ideally, the gliding part will be the fight. You will be gliding and fighting at the same time. And that's why the skill is trick-based. You will be gliding, you will be jumping, you'll do some tricks that maybe trigger an action, or you touch the monster while doing a trick, and that will do the damage. So we want to do it at the same time. Maybe we won't, I don't know. And for the rhythm, we are thinking maybe of a small introduction. You start on the slope with no beast around, so you can control your avatar, you can feel the world, and then at one moment, you find the beast. As the beast is trying to run away, you chase it, and that's when the fight begins. Well, yes.
Okay, it wasn't very clear, maybe in the presentation, that you would actually have for example, the ray gliding alongside you, and you will be, I guess that's how it's going to be happening, right? You're going to have the creature sliding alongside you like a sandworm, and you trick on it, and that's how you fight it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just make me think of another question hearing this one. It's just, maybe I missed something on your presentation. Is that something related to propulsion? Because I can't put in my mind the size of the beast itself, because you're saying that you're going to be able to slide, but can you be able to slide on the beast itself, like something like Shadow of the Colossus, very gigantic beast, or going to be a variety, like small one, gigantic one? There was no slide with propulsion, with environment, characters, and beast itself. It was just what I wanted.
It would be really cool to slide on it, but we talked about it, and our programmers are not really happy with this idea. So we'll see. We can't promise anything about this, but we really want. It will be cool, but it's difficult, and we can do a cool game without it. So it's not really our main focus at the moment.
Also, the beast is gigantic.
We can go on with the questions.
Hi, Laura, Pledijos. I was wondering, you said that you were sliding with the beasts beside you. So it will be something like a race with the beast, and you have to be there first, or how everything will go on this side?
So the idea is that it's hunting, right? So the beast doesn't really want to fight you. The person who wants to fight the other is the player. And so the idea is to catch back the beast in order to fight it, and the beast will defend itself. So the idea is to beat the beast before finishing the race. But it's not a race between you and the beast, it's a fight. I hope it's clear.
Yeah, okay.
Hello, Rémi, game designer Ubisoft Bordeaux. So, do you have a fail condition on the fight with the beast? Because it's a gliding game, so you will be along a slope. This slope has a start and an end. You talk about hunting and finding, but what if you miss the beast? If you take a wrong path, could you take a wrong path? And when you fight the beast, do you generate an infinite slope to fight it until the end? Or if you reach the end before killing it, it's a failed state?
These are things we're still debating on with the team. The victory condition and the defeat conditions are quite not defined yet, especially the defeat one. We don't know if the player can die or just miss the opportunity of killing the beast. The thing is, for the level design of the slope, we would like it, this doesn't work at all, we would like it to be, to allow the player to explore like different paths if they want. Some of them will be faster to catch the beast, some of them will make them waste time. In a more global approach, it will be like some of the paths would lead you to collectibles, maybe for the not for the vertical slice, but for some later production. But yeah, the failing condition is to be defined for now.
Thank you.
I have a last question about the music. You had us listen to a sample of music before, and I was wondering, you described the fact that probably there won't be too much music while you're sliding, and I wanted to know, compared to what we listened to, it felt more atmospheric, more like we were in a scenery part, like you were just taking in the world. Do you have plans or ideas of what's going to be like when you're going to be fighting?
Yeah, absolutely. When you start the game, we just don't want any music because first of all, it will make a lot of interactive music to compose, and we want to focus on the sound design as well. When the boss, I think I will just when the boss will enter the scene, we will have more or less the instrumentation and the mood. We have a theme as well, so we can work out with that theme. But we will have much more rhythmic elements and just faster tempo because since the gameplay is not like an audio mood board for the game. That was our intention.
Thank you.
We do have time for, I don't know, 2 questions more.
Hi, Fabien Salomon, Ubisoft Bordeaux. I'm a producer. I have a question talking about business. What is your business model, the price? Can you tell us more about that, please?
Thinking about adding
Okay, thank you.
last question. Do you have any ideas for the progression in the sense that am I going to be? We could see in your mood board for the main character, you have a lot of cloth pieces and patterns. Do you envision the fact that you would have maybe a piece, like a trophy from each of the hunts, and maybe you get the trophies on you? Anything about how it evolves from encounter to encounter? Do you have any idea when you say you progress with it? What do you envision? What are you thinking about right now? Maybe even if it's not defined yet. Thank you.
If there's no frustration among the jury, we can just thank again the team and welcome the other one. Do you have all your connection in order to fulfill, if you want, already the file?
Il est toujours allumé? Celui-là qui marche. Okay, good morning and thank you for being here for our presentation of our game, which is called Echo. Echo is going to be a first-person 3D horror game where the player is able to see and reveal his environment using sound. The premise of the game is that the tribe of the main character, which is a species, a humanoid species, has been driven underground because of the arrival of horrific monsters. This species has the particularity to see through sound, which means they are using echolocation. The main character, the hero, has been exiled from his tribe, and so now he has to survive outside where those monsters roam. So he's now in a desolate and hostile environment, and if the player, the character, wants to survive, he has to get rid of the creatures from this environment, these lands. Our main pillar, of course, for our game is horror, but we also want to have a strong focus on the universe we are creating and the lore of the game. From the horror pillar, we define 3 other pillars, which are uncertainty. So we want the player to feel that they know nothing about this universe. Rejection, we want the player to feel they are trespassing and disrupting this environment. And finally, our main mechanic, the echolocation. Also, for the lore, we want the culture of the tribe of the main character to be based all around sound and to develop on that. You can see on the left a moving image of what we envision for what the player will see using his echolocation mechanic.
And also on the right, this is a top-down view of the player revealing his environments, and while progressively revealing his environments, he will keep a trace of what he already revealed, and this is the memory of the landscape revealed. But this memory, in gray here, will have a different aesthetic as the recently revealed environments. By default, the monsters are just roaming and scouting the environment, but when they hear a sound, they will investigate and search around for what's produced that sound, because they don't like sound. So if the player wants to survive, he will have to get away as quickly as possible and as quietly as possible, because if the monsters catch him, that will mean his immediate death. He loses immediately, because we don't have any health system. At the beginning of the game, the player will exit the cave, and this will serve as the tutorial for the echolocation mechanic. Then he will go from what we call light phases, and then in dark domes, these will be the dark phases, more driven by horror, and the light phases will be more driven by exploration. So for the light phases, what we want to achieve is a sense of discovery of these areas and a sense of wonder, as is the case, for example, in a Myst-like game that is Objection. And also we want the player to have a foreboding feeling, as is the case in all the Silent Hill games where you are in the city of Silent Hill and not inside. This is, for example, Silent Hill Downpour. For the dark phases, we want really to focus on horror and have the player to feel a visceral feeling of fear, but also to feel the claustrophobic feeling, as is the case in Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And we also want the player to be powerless against his enemies, which is the case in Alien Isolation. Finally, we said since the beginning, we talked about monsters, but actually what we want to achieve is that during the course of the game, the player will realize that those monsters are just actually another tribe, another species of creatures that are just too incompatible, too different from them, so that they can understand each other and communicate with each other. But maybe if the player is attentive enough and explores his environment, he will understand and realize how to communicate, or at least how these creatures, monsters work, and why they are aggressive to them, because this is not a fight against good and evil, but just two different species and incompatible ones.
Echo's environment will be divided in two parts, so a bright part and a dark one. The bright part will be there to reinforce the player's sense of wandering. It will be a half open world to allow exploration, like Nicolas said, and to set up the gradation of the oppressive atmosphere as we approach the black spheres of the dark part. It will show the beauty of an abandoned old world with maybe some contemplation phases, and also serve the narration through various elements like ruins or maybe remnants of Echo's culture, as well as strengthening the immersion in the world. In the dark part, the tension will be at its peak, so we need the player to feel more oppressed and afraid. To do this, the environment will be more narrow and tortuous, with maybe a kind of labyrinthic side, and the player will get less field of view, leading to more wandering and stress. That's why we decided to use 3 different shaders to represent the player's view.
When the player reveals the environment, 3 main things happened. First, the echo as a bright wave illuminates the ground to create the first landmark and know where the objects and volumes are placed. Then, when the wave touches a volume, it triggers a petroleum effect. And after that, after the echo fades out, The sharp edge as bright lines stay visible to establish the vision of the memorized environment. And we can see this like this. And we are actually working on our shader, and we already can see the waves with their colors. About the creatures, we want them to be creepy, but in a ghost or spirit way. It means that they will be only visible from a certain distance, and that's because we want to focus a lot on the silhouettes. I am actually searching for creepy elements for the shapes. The emaciated aspect of the body is really important. We want maybe several arms or legs, and the sharp aspects, sharp angles, the sharp lines can be really interesting too.
So for the sound design, two things we are sure about right now is that first of all, as walking is the primary mean for the player to unveil his environment, big emphasis has to be put on the footsteps accuracy, because they must give accurate feedback to the player regarding like the ground material he's stepping on, or the loudness of his steps, etc., because it will affect his way of playing directly. The second thing is for enemies. As we have creatures that feed off sound, we want their screams and growls to be like everyday life sounds, and this gives us an opportunity to surprise the player and to play with his mind. For example, we can imagine baiting him with a little bird chirping sound, and only to discover too last that it's emitted by a horrible monster. For the music, it will set the atmosphere, and as we have two distinct moods, there's a tricky balance to find between desolated and horrific, and music and soundscape. And I'm gonna make you listen to a morphing try I made. The idea beneath it is that it's for the exploration phase, and the player will go towards the dark area, as explained before. And the idea is that we keep the same musical composition, but we shift audio sonorities from A to B in real time. So it gives something like this.
Here are the tools we are using right now to make Echo. We choose those because we know they are pretty common in these studios, and we are comfy to work with. Echo will be a premium game. You will pay once for the complete experience. We want it to be playable on all sedentary platforms, and we are targeting young adults fond of this kind of game. You will play solo, at home, maybe by night, during session of few hours. For the risk, we know there is a strong competition between indie games today, and we want to give Echo an original identity. For the UX, we want our game to be friendly to play, and we don't want to tell too much about the story during our communication. To sell well Echo, we think we have to deliver a strong experience through an original Echo gameplay. Echo need to survive, but you and me, they need to survive too. We think it's really interesting to tell to players this story about incompatibility. And we know it requires a cohesive art and sound design to sell it well. So you see here, we want to take the time to try and precise the game we're gonna do, and after, we will produce it using coordination and agile methods. Our goal is here, for the second presentation to have the core game and polish it until the end and do the documentation needed. Come, Echo, please. We are really curious to have your feedback on our work. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you. I don't know if it's working. Do you have some questions? I'm not sure it's working, but
Hi, Paul Gerst from Ubisoft. I have a small question, and you mentioned two distinct game phases, the bright one and the dark one. Will your main mechanic, the echolocation, be of any use during the bright phase?
So for the bright phase, we thought about when the player is coming out of his cave and he reaches the surface, he can maybe activate some sort of device that will make sound continually and give this reveal effect of the world around him. But there will be some spots of darkness that the player can explore with his echolocation mechanic. But we will change his range when he enters the dark phase. So for example, in the light phase, he can see much more farther than in the dark phase.
All right, thanks.
Hello. I was really pleased to see a lot of emotion intention written in the presentation. It's really something that I'm really keen on to see in presentation. So I felt it was really good. But I have a question about the main objective of the game. Is it a game of skills, of how you manipulate well your echo and you explore the environment? Or is it you want to go more on just feeling the game and, like you said, just looking at the environment and experience the backstory and the feeling? What is your main direction?
For now, we oriented toward a very visceral experience, so with strong feelings, a lot of set pieces that can give off some story, environmental storytelling. So it's not really based on skill, even if you need some skill to get past some monsters, but it's much more something to experience, we think.
Just to be just to be sure, the only way to interact in this world is to walk, or the player can launch objects or interact to reveal or use the sound as other tools.
So we don't have really time to develop this, but we have, yes, this main mechanic of echolocation through footsteps, but we also thought about other interaction, like maybe there is some type of material on the ground and you can touch it to feel its vibrations, and it can reveal what's is on this material, so you can see enemies from far away, for example. We thought about maybe you can interact with your environment through your sounds, so maybe you can transform your environment, break some objects. And we really brainstorm a lot of ideas, and we think we'll try some of them and see what feels right with this main core gameplay of echolocation.
Hi. I have several questions. It's not very clear to me, even after the question that you just answered, what the player does in the experience. I mean, you explore the environments and you show the if you can maybe go back to the slide where you have the little pattern with the diagram seen from above, when you have the little red dot that sees you because the echo that you make reaches it. The one just after that, yeah, this one. So, for example, here you're showing this situation, describing the gameplay. I don't understand exactly how do you perceive as the player like this section, for example. Is it because here I need to flee from the enemy, if I understand well. My perception from the first-person view is with the echoes I make when I walk. How can I anticipate? Do enemy only come after I've explored every location, or how does it work?
Yeah, so the situation we created here is that you have to bait the monster so that he stops guarding the only exit. And yes, we realized that our main problem for the moment is that the player can't perceive the monster until it's too late, until his echo reaches it and the monster hunts the player. So we are thinking about, like I said, other mechanics like scouting with materials, maybe using some environmental sounds like wildlife to reveal some parts. And we are really thinking about maybe bringing sounds as a core mechanic. For example, Rubin said about the sound direction that the enemies could feed off sounds, and maybe they can emit sounds from everyday life. And we thought about maybe using that to tell the player that a monster is nearby. For example, if he's in a natural environment, but he hears some metallic sounds, he can think it's not his place. Maybe there is some monsters making sounds nearby. So we're thinking about using sounds to really enhance this feeling of uncertainty.
I have other questions. I'm just gonna go on. So you about this, you were just saying using maybe wildlife sounds, and I don't understand when you say everyday life sounds. Like the beasts, the creatures, they make everyday life sounds. Is there like a clear compartmentalization of these types of sound will be sounds of creatures? I don't understand exactly. You were giving the example of bird chirp. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And I want to understand, is this going to be also a way for me to gather information about what I can see? If echolocation, if the sound reaches me, am I going to be able to perceive something, even if the sound comes from the creature?
For now, we are fighting with this paradox that if we use environmental sounds like wildlife, it would be normal that they give off an echo and you can see them. And if we use that for the monster, it will be abnormal for the player to not see the monsters. So it's something that we have to think about.
Okay, I do. Can you go back to the slide with the bright and dark worlds? So yeah, this one. Thank you. I wanted to. It's not really clear for me to understand. So maybe the picture for the dark world probably isn't. You're talking about more interior environments. The question I have is, given the fact that we are using echolocation to see, how is this going to work in more open areas? Because I need reflection to come from the picture. I think it's a slide before. You show an environment. Like it's like a view of a. I don't know if you can go back to the slide. You're showing just an environment and saying this is going to be the way the world looks like. It was open. Well, it's not very important. Let's use this example. How am I going? Yeah, this one. Sorry. Yeah. Here we understand. I understand how the sound waves will reflect on the rocks, and so I can see, I can perceive the immediate surroundings. Maybe not the things in the background, So I was wondering, for example, if we look at the image on the right, how is it going to work? Have you tested it out? Do you have ideas of how it's going to be seen by the player with the echolocation?
Yeah, it's our main prerogative for now is how we treat this question of representation of what the player will be able to see and how we communicate the feeling we want with this limited perception. And that's why I talked about maybe a device that will reveal a lot of environment from the start of the exploration area to create this feeling of wonder and reveal and discovery, and still leave some places to discover by the player on means. And we thought about maybe in these light areas and these exploration phases, the range of the player visibility will be far greater than in the dark areas where it's very limited, to really enhance this feeling of uncertainty that we want to create.
The fact that I see more is, I don't understand how it works with the uncertainty of.
No, the fact that you see less in dark areas reinforces the uncertainty.
Okay.
For speaking about the scope, our first idea was to firstly work on the dark area and define what is passing in here, and after work with a cohesion, surely, between the two on the exploration part. That's all.
Maybe I missed something. It's just basically what is the goal of the game? What do you have to do? Do you have to reach an area, a certain area, or to kill a lot of monsters? And according to this goal, is it a game that you replay because you haven't explored everything and you are in a vast environment and you just keep on replaying to have a different experience because you gain control and stuff like that?
For now, the game is a kind of linear experience where the player has to deactivate these dark domes that represent the monsters' presence in this world. It's where they live, their natural habitats. And so the short-term goal of the player when he gets out of the cave and see this dark dome is to enter it and deactivate it. And that's how we end our vertical slice. But throughout the game, the player will go through other exploration phases and other dark domes. And we kind of want to use these dark domes as a way to make the story progress. Maybe when you deactivate the first dark dome, these creatures are now refugees and they start fleeing and they start warning other creatures about your arrival. Maybe they start to attack you into the life phases to create a kind of surprise for the player. And what we talked about the non-duality of the conflict between yourself and the monsters, we want that the player who takes the time to explore the world and maybe find secret things about the civilization that was there before can maybe, we don't know how yet, unlock an ending where he can communicate with the monsters and reach an agreement between them.
Can you control the level of sound you are producing with your character? If can I be silent or very loud to see more or that kind of thing?
For now, we tied the reveal of the environment through footsteps. So we thought about if you walked normally, you have a certain range and you can run to make more noises and reveal further, and you can be very sneaky and discreet to reveal a lot of to be discreet, to not make any sounds. And we thought about maybe a mechanic where you can hold your breath to become totally invisible in case a monster is real nearby, but you kind of take a risk because you have a limited time to hold your breath.
Hi, Hi, I'm Marshall Valeri, co-founder of OBB. I was wondering, you're talking about open world environment, and usually horror games, they are highly scripted, highly detailed type of games. Is that something you're still considering? Because I fear that you have a very short production time frame, I think like 1 or 2 months, and you're afraid you're gonna have an empty stage where nothing much happens. And have you considered a more constrained experience like the PT demo for this game that was never made?
It's true that we tried to reach a very scripted experience, and I think when we said an open world environment, it wasn't very the right term, because we only wanted to say that the environment is outside and is opening up by contrast when you start in this cave. So it's more like you start very claustrophobic and narrow, you get out of the cave, and then you have this feeling of reveal and openness, which is kind of fake, because there is still maybe a set path where you can take some detours in your exploration, but there is only one set goal, which is the Dark Dome you have to enter.
And for the scope, yes, we know we have few time to make the game. That's why we are working on a small area, but we want to make it well. And we know we can't do an open world. It's obvious, but the idea here is more to have so environmental writing and try to do some of that, but not totally entirely open world. It's not possible.
Sure. Have you played the PT demo? Do you see what it is? Yeah. I think it's a very good example of how you, with something that is very small, you can create a loopable experience, and you can use a few assets and create a bigger game that you can actually build. And I would highly recommend to check it on YouTube or.
Yes, thank you.
One question. I think I didn't understand quite clearly. Can you kill the monsters or not?
You can kill the monsters. The player is killed in one hit if the monster catches them, and is powerless. You just have to flee.
Okay, so you cannot really kill them. You have to flee and
you
stealth.
Yeah, you have to use stealth, and your means of action against the monster in this narrative is you have to deactivate the Dark Dome to make them flee.
It's just a last question. I was wondering, it's not very clear to me, what type of horror are you going to be playing on? You gave the example of Amnesia and Alien Isolation. What is your take on horror?
It's kind of a tricky question, because we want to create a gradual kind of horror where you enter this exploration phase where it's very foreboding and but still beautiful in its own way, even if it's a desolate world. And then when you enter the dark areas, we want really the player to feel pressured, even to the point where it doesn't want to continue, even if he knows he has to continue to complete the game. And it's kind of feeling we want to create, where he destroys the Dark Dome and he enters again the light area. He feels content and maybe free, yes, from this oppressive presence. And in the complete game, it's where we would reintroduce this creature in the light areas and attack the player where he feels safe.
Yeah, hi again. I was just wondering about the petroleum effect you have in this shader. Is it supposed to maybe act in the gameplay at some point, or is it just visual?
For now, it's just visual, and maybe when it's really implemented in the game, we can see what it really creates in terms of gameplay and how we can use it.
Sure, thanks.
Hi, thank you for being here today. We are members of the team behind Tales of Poena, and we will try to show you what our game looks like at this moment. Tales of Poena is a 2D adventure game on PC, on computer, sorry, playable with a mouse controller. And there is two main ideas behind our project. The first one is our intention to build a fantastic, poetic, and melancholy world with fantastic beasts. The second one is we want to provide a game experience where the player can learn how to interact with these creatures without trying to catch them, to own them, or to hurt them in any way. That's why we're more inspired by some movies, for example, Fantastic Beasts, than some classical game like Pokemon or Monster Hunter, because they just don't fit our vision. And this idea of a special bond between humans and these fantastic creatures is really at the heart of our game world. Speaking of the game world, we think Poena should be a small, isolated area, a kind of lost world. And the outside world could be related to our 19th century, but the society of Poena should develop by itself, and it has its own specificity. The main one is the state of symbiosis that people at Poena reach with these fantastic creatures. They learn to work together because they have to protect themselves from danger, because at Poena, people, humans, are not on the top of the food chain. That's why we think the landscape at Poena should be wide and wild, and we think the people could have their own sense of beauty. For example, they could have their own architectures, and even if everyday life, they could have their own clothing style, their own habits, their own way of life, of eating, etc. And for example, they could have their own musical folklore, which could mimic the sound of the animal they just hear for a long time now. And we got something to show you. We think to make our game believable, we need strong diversity in our bestiary. So that's why we thought about a different shape, a different size, and different color to our beast. And we also we would like to have some very cute creatures, and some could be just ugly, because we think it's kind of credible. But all of this is just the main side of Poena, and there is another one, which is a darker one. It's the fear. The people in Poena are afraid of the outside world, of the violence that other humans could bring in. And some people in Poena also think they should maintain this climate of fear because they want to keep their hands on the interaction between the outside world and the society of Poena. But all of this is the general background of our game, but the story truly starts with a mysterious curse, which tends to break this special bond between humans and the beast. And that's because the healer at Poena can't understand why the beast start to act, to behave strangely, they become more aggressive. That's because they can't understand that, and they can't find a solution. That some people start to think they should ask help to the outside world. And that's a perfect transition to speak about the game design.
Yes, so in this universe that is hopefully taking shape into your minds, what is the place and purpose of the player character? What is he here to do? How does he interact with this world? Well, in short, he's a foreign healer, and he's been called to Poena to investigate and to try to restore balance to this threatened ecosystem. So this description of the character is a good introduction to the verbs of actions that will be available to players. The fact that he is a foreigner is quite important, as it means he will have to explore a world that he doesn't know and that he doesn't quite understand, and that can be somewhat hostile to him. As a healer, he will interact with the beasts in a very particular way. He is not there to capture them, he's there to study the beast, he's there to help them to find out what they need, to heal them, or to soothe their pain, or even sometimes soothe their death. And as we said, Poena can be somewhat hostile, but since he's only a healer, he will never engage into any kind of fight or conflict with the beast, and if there are threats, they will be avoided through the narrative, for example. He is also a scholar, and it's his expertise that led Poena's people to request his help. And the investigation part means that players will have to look for clues and engage into dialogue with people in order first to build an understanding of Poena's way of life, and of course to find out the origin of the evil that is disturbing this society. In terms of gameplay, this translates into several game states and phases. The main hub is the representation of the interior of the trailer used by the character to explore Poena. From there, players can access information about the beasts they've discovered in the bestiary, about their quests in the journal, and they can also access the map, which will show the progression of the exploration, as well as the currently available points of interest and quests. So this is another hub which grants access to the various zones of Poena, which can be villages, forests, mountains, and so on. We envision Poena as a semi-open world, which will be explored guided by the narrative. And the story will be revealed through a system of quests with a main quest and some optional secondary branches, which could sometimes affect the main one. The various zones of Poena will be explored through a system of 2D layers that players can navigate through by clicking on, as you can see on this prototype of the mechanic. The idea is that exploring these layers will reveal new layers and new available interactions, such as items to pick up, or trails and clues to investigate, or sometimes NPCs that you can talk to, which will be displayed as in a visual novel with a background, a character, and the lines of dialogue. But most of the times, exploration quests will be about finding a beast and interact with her. And this will happen in a dedicated game state that should be entered fluidly to avoid the feeling of entering a minigame. But this is the game state in which players must feel like they are a healer, they are here to develop a special bond with the beast, a bond that is based on trust and understanding rather than on conflict or ownership. So we are still figuring out how to convey this feeling, and we are considering several approaches. One of them would be the use of a more dreamlike interface in which players will interact with the spirit of the beast. And in terms of mechanics, we are considering the use of a musical instrument for the healing, the use of medicine that would need to be crafted and given to the beast. It could also happen through oral communication or physical touch, and all these mechanics could be combined to bring diversity to the gameplay, as well as allow us to build a difficulty progression. A few words about a potential crafting system. We are still thinking about it, and we tend towards avoiding a complex systemic crafting, but we think it would be interesting and coherent to the experience of being a healer to have some kind of medicine crafting, but we are thinking about how big and important it should be. Also, the game will feature 2D animated cutscenes to bring diversity to the experience, as well as reward players for the progression. As you can see, there are still some gray areas regarding the translations of our intentions into gameplay. We really want to offer an experience with a fantastic world that players really want to explore and feel empathy toward beasts, and we are trying to find the best ways to convey this feeling. We also find the layer-based exploration system promising in terms of originality and experience, but we are aware that we need to find meaningful ways to use it. Quickly, we want to mention that we are integrating accessibility into the design process. Accessible design is finally starting to be regarded as important, so we think it's an enriching exercise to consider these questions throughout the production. Thank you for your attention. We hope and expect you have some questions and feedback for us to help us go in the right direction. And here comes the team. Thank you.
So hi again, Laura, Pledijus, producer. First question, you said it was on PC. Why not mobile? It's obviously tactile gameplay.
I think we want to develop it on PC, but we know that it could work on a mobile and tablet, and also other platforms like Switch. But for now, we are focusing on PC. But maybe maybe we are going to consider it more on.
Sorry, I think your experience is different. It's different on PC or in mobile. The time you are on the platform is different. So we want the player to have a big time on his PC, and I think maybe in mobile you are just going to play 1 hour, 2 hours. It depends if it's on tablet. You are at home and it's different. So we have to think about it. To think the experience in depends on the platform.
That would depend on the lifetime of your game, but well, I really kind of don't agree with you on this. There is a lot of, like Monument Valley, for example, you can play for 10 minutes, do 1 level if you want, or an hour or 2 and finish a game. And your game seems a little like this in terms of time play, because you can explore one place and then go and do something else, or you can play explore all the game and finish it. That depends on the lifetime of a game, but it seems mobile for me.
I think we want to be careful because in terms of scope, we are not sure what we can do, and we think if we have to do the game on mobile and on computer, it will ask maybe twice the work, or maybe not. Just for the beginning, we want to be careful.
Actually, if it was the controls were different, yes, but you're on click with the mouse, and a click is a tap. That's it.
Hi, I have a controversial question. Maybe you talk about diversity and what I got from your presentation is you have basically a white bearded male coming to save the animals in a village of black people. I just wanted to know if you were aware of this or if I misunderstood from the presentation. But it seemed very like classical video game, like classical AAA video games that does not really fit what you're trying to build here.
The character you saw on the character page slide wasn't the character you will play. It was just a way to represent what could the character look like, and it was in black or white and white, but the concept art you did that inspired the main image was actually a black guy with a beard, but we want to do maybe more a female playable character and probably not white, so it's something we decided already.
From a gameplay perspective, we saw the healing part, maybe the crafting part. It's a narrative game. What are the other interaction possible? Is there already the dialogue choices, ID and object faces, this kind of stuff?
We're still figuring this out, but we think we want to focus on the narrative part, and the gameplay will be in the exploration phases. And you can have some, maybe not hidden object, but once you've got a layer, you have to find out where to go next. This kind of gameplay, and the healing should not feel too mechanical. And in terms of dialogue choices, we think we want to have the players to feel like he has impact on his experience. We want players to feel like if they are talking, like two people who played the game should have different experiences, but it shouldn't happen through dialogue choices, but more through action choices. For example, he can do two different things and he has to choose one or to do first, and this will impact, for example, the rest of the experience in small or big layer. Yeah, is that okay?
Hi, David Bowman. I'm at Darewise in Paris right now. So I'm not sure the interaction with the beasts. Can I fail in that interaction, or is it always predetermined?
We don't want to have a fail state that would require you to start over, but we think it would be interesting to have some kind of you can fail to heal a beast, and then it will impact the rest of the narrative or the rest of the quest that won't be available because you failed to heal a beast. But we don't want this minigame effect where you are, or not minigame, but you're playing to heal and then you fail and then you start over and try something else. We want to avoid that. It should be linear.
Hello, I have a question about the main objective of the game related to the narrative. It's to resolve an investigation about the threats on the world, and how creating a relationship and healing with the beasts will help to resolve the investigation. What is the purpose, the motivation about the player, what's the gain to help the creatures?
We're still thinking about it, but one lead we follow is maybe if we success to heal a beast, it can help you. It can maybe unlock new area in the base layer-based system of exploration. It could unlock new items, or maybe you could become friends to other people, and you will unlock new clue to your quest. That's just some needs.
And the character is a healer, but is also a scholar, and is very interested into the beast and the fact that you've got a bestiary to complete. We don't think you need to complete the whole bestiary to finish the game, and this also brings more replayability. But the fact that you've got your bestiary and you see a shadow and you're like, oh, this beast looks good, I should find her, and then it's another motivation for the player to keep on building relationship with the beast. And we want really the narrative to be important, but as important as building relationship with the beast like this.
Okay, yeah, I think it should be a main focus also to see how the mechanics of healing, because your intention is poetry and the relationship with the beast is influenced by the main storyline and how you justify it.
Thank you.
Hi, Nicolas Castin from Zobo. I would like to know more about the exploration system when you are to click. Can you easily go back, move around? Yeah, can you tell me more?
Yeah, we only have one example, and that's why it's like a design challenge, because we need to find interesting ways to use it. And also in terms of UX design, we are thinking about how we show the player that he can come back into a layer. So that's going to be a big focus for us to make it really interesting in terms of level design, as well as understandable for the player. And maybe you want to.
we get also some leads. We are influenced by a game which is called Professor Layton, and they are not the same exploration system, but they use an interface with just arrow, and it could be a lead, just the character could move on by clicking on a layer and move back using the arrow, but there is also other leads. For example, we could just use layer to go back, for example, some print food on the ground, and we know we want to make something good with this system, so we need to think about it again.
Hello, Ronan from Ubisoft Paris, I'm game designer. I was just wondering, because mainly beside exploration mechanic, your presentation focused mainly on the healing game system, but you haven't mentioned nurturing mechanic, but it seems like it's not a nurturing game. Why haven't you mentioned and go deeply into this kind of mechanic?
There is a nurturing?
Yes, nurturing.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you mean, like, why aren't we focusing on the healing
yes,
part?
Well, first, why don't you use the name that is for this kind of game and this kind of interaction, nurturing? And secondly, why don't you go deeper into this kind of mechanic during the presentation?
Maybe just because we aren't sure of what we want to do and we're still thinking about it. That's
Oh, okay, no, it's not a tricky question, sorry if you feel that, but just, it seems that maybe it's a better way to emphasize the creatures that you are going to create. And I work a lot on nurturing games, so I'm used to this kind of gameplay and this kind of emphasis with the environment and the universe, but maybe your presentation need to focus a little bit more on this specific gameplay, because beside the exploration, this maybe should be the best way to highlight your creation. So it wasn't a tricky question, but the word nurturing definitely needs to be in your presentation if you are going to focus on this kind of interaction with your creator.
Thank you.
Hi, seems to be working. So, what is the purpose of for the player to complete the bestiary? Do you feel like it's only a progression marker, or will it influence the game in any way?
We're not sure about that. We think there is true pleasure just to complete the bestiary, to see these animals. But yeah, I guess we would like to link with this with the narration, and it could bring some replayability. So I think it's a lead we need to explore.
Yes, and for example, if we consider that you've a beast appear in your bestiary if you've successfully healed her, then maybe you can have different experiences. If, for example, a player manages to heal her and another one doesn't, then they can realize that in another zone there was no beast because this beast was healed and then came to the zone and threatened the other one, so they went away. And this is how we envision the impact on the narrative and on the world as a whole through the bestiary.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I have a question. It's going to be along the lines of questions we've had before. I was wondering if the beasts you're creating in that populate this environment, are they supposed to be tamed? Are they supposed to be pets? Or are they wild? And have you, maybe just a feeling I have from the presentation you gave, feels like it's probably more wild creatures. Have you thought about how you're going to create a relationship So I'm going to give you an example, even though it's very different because it's not non-violent. But in the game Horizon Zero Dawn, it's a game about creatures. You get those mechanical creatures, and what's interesting in the game is that you have this kind of rapport that you have to build with the creatures, where first time you encounter them, you don't understand what they do, how they behave, and so you're kind of watching them, trying to decipher how they work, what they do, what are their motivations, even though most of the time it's to kill you, but it would be interesting for you to explore. Maybe you said the character is a scholar, so probably you will want to have this kind of interaction to be able to investigate how do I find those creatures, they're wild, maybe I have to sneak to wait for one to show up, and once one shows up I have to watch it to try to understand what's going on, what this beast is about. Have you thought about that? And maybe it's just like a feeling from the perception I had from your presentation that you should probably investigate this aspect of thinking about your game.
Yes, this investigation about the beast should happen in the exploration phases. You can, for example, if you've got a beast to heal and you don't know how to heal her, you can go and find other beasts like that that are not necessarily injured, and then you can investigate their trails and try to find them and try to, as you say, study them and find out how they live and then what they should need to be healed. And regarding the first question about diversity of the beasts, there's no notion of ownership in Poena. It's all about cooperation and mutual aid in the everyday life. But and it serves mutual interest for the beasts and for the humans. But they live. Humans live among the beasts, and beasts may live among humans, and it shows into the everyday life. For example, we were thinking about having beasts that are determining the occupation of the people. For example, a beast that can throw fire, and then that should be used for like irons and all that, if you see what I mean.
Like a blacksmith?
Yeah, that
okay.
Blacksmith, yeah. For example, that kind of mix between humans and beasts, but they are not tamed, they are just here to help because it helps them as well. Kind of.
Okay, well, maybe it's not kind of the definition. If they're tame, is that they actually behave in a way you can interact with them. So maybe.
Well, maybe we need to find better ways to show this, but we want to players to feel like this is not. They are not tame. They are helping humans because they got something from it. If you.
Okay.
Maybe it's a very narrow difference, but.
You have to figure it out, probably.
Hi, Mathieu, I'm a sound designer at Ubisoft. First, I really like the idea. And we haven't heard much about sound apart from the piece of music. That was nice. I was wondering what your intentions are in terms of sound design after the music, and if you've considered maybe using it to help the gameplay, maybe using sound for as a hints when you're on a layer to know that there's maybe a beast on another layer nearby or something like that. I don't know. What are your ideas on the use of sound beyond the music?
Yes. So for the sound design, a lot of the work I had to do is to create the nature of the sound of each different creature. And about the gameplay, so as the gameplay is defining himself during our work, yes, we can think as this kind of mechanic and sound as a hint to explore the layers. It's yes, it's a nice idea. And to what I tried to show in the little extracts of music is to use the sound of the creature to let the people of Poena make their music, and yes, that's how sound design and music can blend in this world. And yes, about the gameplay, I don't know if you have something more.
Thanks.
Thank you. As I said, we will have a two-hour break, so we're gonna have lunch together. But you can take the time to go visit the students sur le plateau. That's how we call it, in the boxes, where they are settled now. So feel free to go if you want to add some more individual comments. Thank you for your questions this morning. We're gonna have lunch downstairs, so we have to go downstairs, and we will show you. 14.
Non, mais le lien du questionnaire, il m'a envoyé par mail. Enfin, je sais pas si tu t'es inscrit avant ou pas, mais tu dois avoir le lien du questionnaire. Pour le remplir de chez toi. Enfin, pour l'instant, c'est une question. Parce qu'on a des jeux d'occasion. Ça a l'air faisable. Le deuxième était peut-être plus flou à ce niveau-là. Oui, c'est ça. Peut-être aussi je commence à avoir la décidé.
Chez Dell, quand tu regardes ici, ça fait vraiment l'armée.